What if waiting until 73 to touch your retirement accounts was the costliest mistake you'll ever make? In this episode of Retire Stronger, we reveal how required minimum distributions can trigger a tax avalanche, costing you six figures over your lifetime, and the smart moves to make years before the IRS forces your hand. Hello, and welcome back to Retire Stronger, the podcast where we help you retire smarter with greater confidence and more control over your financial future. I'm John Foard, and alongside me is my co-host, Bill Kearney. And today's conversation might be one of the most financially impactful episodes we've ever had, possibly, because it's a mistake that can quietly drain six figures from your retirement without you even realizing it. We're talking about what happens when you wait until the IRS forces your hand at age 73 to start taking required minimum distributions, or otherwise known as RMDs. Now, for some of you listening, 73 might feel like a far off number, something you can deal with later. But here's the truth. If you just coast until then, without a proactive strategy, you could find yourself in a much higher tax bracket than necessary. That could mean losing tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Money that could have been funding your retirement lifestyle, supporting your family, or even leaving a legacy. So we're going to break down exactly how RMDs work, why waiting is such a costly mistake, and the specific window of opportunity you have before age 73 to reduce your lifetime tax bill. And most importantly, we'll share real life examples and strategies that our clients have used to keep more of their money where it belongs, which is working for them.
Yeah, John, that's right. We're going to talk a little bit here to start with about the RMD trap, and we need to start by looking at the landscape. And I thought it would be a good idea before we dive into the details here to take the airplane back up to 10,000 feet and just clue the listener in on what we're talking about here. This is a situation where we're referring to the three areas where your money can exist from an IRS standpoint. That is taxable accounts, tax deferred, and tax free. That's really the three areas that your money can exist. All of your money at this point in time is in one of those three areas. And the key here, what we're talking about when we talk about an RMD trap, is if you don't do the proper planning ahead of time to properly balance money in those three areas, and you just sort of let things happen as you move along, and then you hit age 73, you could be in a situation where you're in this trap. Okay, so what happens with most people is they've spent decades saving. Maybe they've used the company 401k plan or a 403b or a traditional IRA or other tax deferred accounts. And you've been deferring taxes and you've built up this giant balance in this type of account. And you're pushing the tax bill from those accounts off into the future. Your friend, the government, has been very patient with you up to this point, right?
Yes, up to that point for sure.
And at this point now at age 73, under current law, it's when they start forcing you to take money out of these accounts, which, John, you mentioned the RMD, the required minimum distribution. And when they say required, they mean it. This isn't a joke. If you don't take the distribution, the penalty can be as high as 25% of the amount that you should have taken, right? So if your RMD is $100,000 in a given year and you don't take it, the penalty could be $25,000 on the penalty, and then you still have to take the RMD on top of that. So this is a forced withdrawal that happens. And so here's where the trouble begins, right? The RMD is based on your account balance and life expectancy. So if you've done a good job saving, this is a big balance. And the calculation doesn't care whether you need income or not. It doesn't care what tax bracket you're in. It doesn't care how it affects your Social Security provisional income. It simply says withdraw this amount and pay the taxes on it. So for a retiree, John, that has $1.5 million in tax deferred accounts, that first RMD could easily be $55,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now you add in Social Security income, maybe a pension, maybe some investment income or dividends. and suddenly you're looking at a tax bill that's a lot higher than what you expected. And it's not uncommon that we've seen for people in this situation to get pushed from a 22% bracket up into the 32% bracket almost overnight.
Right.
And to a man or to a woman, these are people who all swore they were going to be in a lower tax bracket when they hit retirement, right?
Absolutely.
So that's part of it. All right. It doesn't stop there. Every year as you get older, the percentage that the IRS requires you to withdraw from these accounts gets bigger.
Correct.
So by your 80s, those withdrawals can cross into six figures annually. That's extra taxable income. It's got a ripple effect. It can make up to 85% of your Social Security benefit taxable. It can trigger Medicare IRMA surcharges. Maybe you end up paying hundreds of dollars more per month on Medicare premiums, and it can phase out deductions and credits and other things you might qualify for. So we've now spun into the muck here, John, right? So this is what we mean when we talk about an RMD trap. It's not just about the taxes on the withdrawal itself. Most people understand that part of it. It's about how that withdrawal pushes you into a higher cost, pushes you into a higher tax bracket, lost opportunities across the board, lost earning power on those dollars going forward. And the frustrating part is for many people, this is avoidable with the right planning before age 73, which goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning on balancing your tax accounts properly in those years before you get to this time.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And I want to also kind of take us back up to that 10,000 foot level again one more time and just remind everybody here that this episode is not speaking to people that are 65 or 60 or 70, a couple of years away from having to take these required distributions. You should be starting to have a plan and putting that plan into motion in your 40s and 50s, because that is the time when you should be doing this. It's the time when you can make the most impact on your tax situation in retirement when you're forced to start taking these distributions later on in life. Do not wait until a couple of years prior to this forced withdrawal date. It just, you're not doing yourself a favor by doing that. So again, we're not talking to people that are knocking on the door of retirement here. We're talking to anyone that has, tax deferred retirement accounts that need to start having a plan with regard to how you're going to take these distributions and how the tax impact will affect your retirement income later on in life. So, let's further the discussion here, Bill, and talk about why waiting is so costly. And I want to kind of walk through a scenario we've seen more times than we can count. Imagine you retire at 65 with $1 million in a traditional IRA. You've got some savings in a brokerage account, maybe some cash in the bank, and you think, I'll just live off the non-retirement assets first and let the IRA keep growing. It sounds smart. After all, why tap into an account you don't have to? Because again, you have not been required to touch that account yet. The problem is that by leaving that IRA untouched, you're letting it compound inside of a tax-deferred wrapper. On the surface, that growth looks fantastic. It looks great. But in reality, you're growing a bigger and bigger tax obligation. So by the time you now hit age 73, the account might be worth 1.4 or 1.5 million. And the RMDs, the required distributions, will be much larger than they would have been if you had started drawing down earlier. Again, goes back to my discussion a second ago about, planning ahead of time, well ahead of time. So here's where the math gets painful, though. Those larger RMDs mean higher annual taxable income. Higher taxable income means higher federal tax rates, possibly state taxes, depending on where you live. Again, just like you mentioned before, Medicare surcharges and more of your Social Security benefits being taxed. Over the course of a 20-year retirement, the cumulative impact can easily reach six figures or more. And that goes to the IRS instead of your heirs. And we've had this conversation with every client. Because Bill, you'll probably chuckle about this because we joke a little bit about it, but it's not a joke. About how we have clients on each end of the spectrum. We have clients that say, I want to spend every dollar I have and and I want my final check I write to bounce on the day that I'm no longer here. My mom jokes around about that. And then we have clients on the other end of that spectrum that say, no, I want to save as much as I possibly can and pass it down and leave a massive legacy for my family. And we have clients everywhere in between. But the number one question that we love to ask is, okay, regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, when you're no longer here and the money that you have left over, would you rather that money go to the IRS or would you rather it go to your family? And the answer is always, I'd rather it go to my family. So the IRS is a massive partner with you in your retirement account, in your tax deferred retirement account, like a traditional IRA, 401k, 403b. Let's make them as small of a partner as we possibly can. And that's the whole idea here. So the other hidden cost is flexibility. Folks, once RMDs start, you lose the ability to choose how much to withdraw. You might have years where the market is down and you'd prefer to leave your money invested, but you can't. You have to take the money out, even if it means selling investments at a loss. And you have to pay tax on that withdrawal, whether you want the income or not. The bottom line is, folks, waiting until 73 to address this means you're letting the IRS dictate your withdrawals. You're letting them dictate your tax bracket. And ultimately, you're letting them dictate your retirement income strategy. And their plan benefits them, not you.
Yeah. And I mean, look, so that's all the bad news, right? So, like, for some of our older listeners, you might remember Paul Harvey, who used to say, here's the rest of the story.
Right.
The rest of the story here is the proactive window that there are steps you can take to take control of this situation. And we've talked about this on previous podcasts, on previous episodes. And frankly, it's amazing to me that we're now, almost 12 minutes into this episode, and we're just now bringing up the concept of Roth conversions. And we do joke about this a lot on here that, hey, here we go talking about Roth conversions again. This is just a Roth conversion shop. Well, here's the point. If you think about it, we are somewhat limited as tax optimizers in the tools that we have to help people optimize their tax situation. Mm-hmm. We're somewhat limited in the methods we can use to actually help you balance your taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free accounts. And one of the main tools that we have, one of the main arrows in our quiver that we have, is the Roth conversion strategy. Now, Roth conversion is not a product. It's part of a strategy. It's a process, right? And it takes time to do it. We feel like there's a golden window between the days that you stop working and when you turn 73. And that window is when your income is often at its lowest. It might just be your Social Security, maybe a small pension, or maybe you have no income at all if you delay your income, for a few years. But during that time is when you can be strategic. And, that's where the Roth conversion comes in. And again, a Roth conversion, if you're not familiar with this is when you deliberately move money from your traditional IRA into a Roth IRA and you pay the tax on it during that transfer. Okay. And while you're doing this, you're now going to enjoy that tax-free growth in the Roth account for the rest of your life. The great thing is that Roth IRAs also are not subject to required minimum distributions, which means you control when or if you ever take money out. So let's say you retire at age 65 with $1 million in your IRA, traditional IRA. You run the numbers and see that you can convert $60,000 a year without going above the 22% federal bracket, and you do that for 8 years. You're moving nearly $500,000 into the Roth before you hit age 73. That's $500,000 that will never be taxed again, and it won't inflate your RMDs later on. That's part of the balancing that needs to happen, or the rebalancing, if you will, between taxable, tax-deferred, tax-free, right? So the approach here can be fine-tuned to avoid Medicare IRMA thresholds. If you're strategic, you can fill up your current tax bracket without triggering those surcharges. It's a delicate balance. You really need to have the right tools to help you do this.
Agreed.
But the payoff can be enormous here, not just in taxes saved, but in the flexibility gained for you, for your loved ones. And again, this isn't just about you. If you leave a large traditional IRA to your children under the current law, they have to empty it within 10 years. And if they're in their peak earning years, that can push them into the highest tax brackets. I've seen this. I'm dealing with this with several different clients right now that for the next 10 years are going to be in the highest federal tax brackets that they can be in because they have these traditional IRAs that have been passed down to them. By doing conversions now, you're giving your heirs tax-free assets instead of a tax headache. It's a tremendous difference. So if you're at all concerned about leaving a legacy, it pays, even if it doesn't help you as much during your retirement years on the tax side of things, it will help your heirs tremendously. Has that potential, obviously, going forward.
Yeah, and I think now's a good time to give our obligatory disclosure that we're not giving you any type of financial, tax, or legal advice on this episode today. We're just wanting to talk very high level about these different concepts and why it's important to consider these things prior to hitting the age of 73. So remember, we're not giving tax, legal, or financial advice. Please consult your tax or financial professional if you have questions on any of these topics that we're discussing today. Feel free to reach out to us as well. We're happy to answer your questions and help you in any way we can. So yeah, Bill, that's well said. And I think your example of that you just went through of a 65-year-old with $1 million in your IRA is something we probably see so often. And to your point about going through it with current clients that we're working with right now, um, absolutely. We have so many clients that are required to pull money out of their inherited IRAs because of that 10-year window. And I would also tell you, folks that are listening, do not. It could be beneficial for you to wait to the end of the 10 years and withdraw it all at once, but that could also be very detrimental. And so taking it out over that 10 year and spreading it out over that 10 years might be a potentially a better fit for you. But again, it's going to have to be very specific to the individual. There's no cookie cutter approach here that I would say fits every possible client. It's all
John,
very much individualized.
John, one point right there on that as well. You cannot convert an inherited IRA to a Roth account either.
Correct.
So you have to take those funds out and place them in an after-tax account of some sort. You cannot do a Roth conversion on inherited IRAs. I think that might have been something that might have been running through some folks' head as they're listening.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when you further that point, let's just take that one step further. I mean, by not properly planning and doing some proactive tax planning prior to you being required to start taking your required distributions at age 73, you're actually compounding the problems for your heirs if any of those funds are left to them down the road, especially if you leave a significant dollar amount to them down the road. I mean, I have a client that has well over $1 million in an inherited IRA. Think about the problems this client is going through right now. They are, just to your point, Bill, they are in the highest earning years of their lives. And this client has a 10-year window to pull out over $1 million from an inherited IRA. That is bumping this client and her family into the highest possible tax bracket, and it's forcing her to put these monies into a taxable account going forward, and that creates additional tax issues down the road for this family as well. And it takes away their options. It takes away their flexibility on what they're going to do with these funds going forward. So again, it goes back to all these things that you have control over right now, and you need to take action, as we sit here today versus waiting. And again, this isn't just for people that are 65 or 60 or 50 or 55. It's for anyone who has tax deferred retirement accounts. I'm not saying you have to take action on something today, but if you're sitting here at 40 years of age, 45 years of age, and you have an IRA, you have a 401k plan, you have tax deferred accounts, get an action plan in place and be ready to take action when the timing is appropriate for you. And the only way to do that is to either figure it out on your own or work with a qualified advisor, whether it be a CPA or a combination of your tax advisor and your financial advisor, to come up with an appropriate plan. So kind of let's talk about like an action plan and takeaways, Bill. Let's summarize kind of what you should take away from this conversation. I think we've summarized a lot of it already, but first, RMDs are not just a retirement formality. They are a tax event that can cascade into higher Medicaid costs, more taxes on your Social Security, and lost deductions. So secondly, waiting until the IRS forces you to act at 73 means you've lost your best years of proactive planning. We just talked pretty in depth about that. And then third, the years between retirement and RMD age are what we would consider your best chance to reposition assets for a lifetime of tax efficiency. So here's what I'd suggest for anyone listening, and Bill, feel free to fill in and add to as we go, as I kind of go through this list. Is one, run a projection on what your required distributions will be at age 73 if you do nothing at all. The number might shock you. Number two, identify your low income years between now and age 73 where you can realize taxable income intentionally through Roth conversions or strategic withdrawals without jumping tax brackets or bumping into the next higher tax bracket. Number three, coordinate with a professional. Again, I've said that now for the third time. Coordinate with a professional who understands tax efficient retirement planning. This is not something to figure out with guesswork. So please seek out help if you're uncomfortable trying to do this on your own. And then number four, we always like to kind of put this out there. Think about the legacy you're creating, because this is as much about what you leave behind as it is about your own retirement spending. And again, it goes back to that question that we always ask: who would you rather receive more of your money that you leave behind when you're no longer here? Your heirs, your family, or charities you have an intent to leave money to, or would you rather the IRS receive those funds? And I would say that I pretty much know the answer to that. So remember this: taxes are one of the few aspects of retirement planning you can control with foresight. If you wait until 73, you're playing by the IRS's rules. And if you start now, you're playing by your own rules.
Yeah, John, I think all of that is really well said. And I think that one thing we want to make sure people take away from this too is that all of this might sound complex or complicated or a little scary, and ultimately it's not. Ultimately, there is a process that you can take that will take you through from beginning to end where you are, what the problem is, and how you can fix it. Simply those three steps, right? And you have to remember too that it is a process. It's not going to be fixed in one meeting, right, with someone. But if you
Correct.
find the right person, if you find someone you can trust in this area, and we know that can be difficult to find someone you trust, but if you find someone you trust that can help you here, it will make a difference. And I have said for many years, John, I know you agree with me on this. I really believe that for most people, their largest expense in retirement is not going to be healthcare. It's going to be taxes. And I feel like this is the first generation of retirees. This baby boomer generation is the first one that actually has significant wealth and that really needs to plan for how they're going to distribute it, because these retirement windows are growing. They're no longer just 5 years or even 10 years. We're talking 15, 20, 25, 30 years people are in retirement. And so that is a whole different phase of your life that has a whole different tax structure assigned to it. And so we don't want the IRS to design this plan for you, right? Their version is really expensive. It benefits them. It's great for them because they don't take any of the risk along the way, right? So, but by taking advantage of the years before the RMD kicks in, you can save potentially 6 figures. We've seen 7 figures for folks in retirement that we projected that they would save over their lifetime. Reducing stress, create more flexibility in retirement. So if you're listening and you're wondering whether you're in that proactive window, you probably are. And we'd love to help you find out, right? We offer conditional strategy calls where we run the numbers for you for your exact situation. The information is easy to digest, gives you a clear plan for how to minimize taxes and maximize your outcomes going forward, and do this before it becomes a problem.
Absolutely, Bill. Well said. And folks, you can reach us at our website at at crownadvisorgroup.com. That's Crown Advisor with an OR group.com. And you can also call us 704-469-0200. You can also find us on social media, and feel free to like us on whatever platform you listen to, your favorite platform where you listen to your podcasts, or even on YouTube. So feel free to give us a like and share with your friends, family, and colleagues. We would appreciate that as well. Again, feel free to hit our website and hit us up for a complimentary assessment as well. Feel free to click that button, answer a few questions, and grab a time on our calendar. We look forward to speaking with you. Anything you want to add, Bill, before we close it out for today?
No, and this doesn't even have to be something where you're at the very beginning and have no answers. Maybe you have a plan in place. You're not quite sure if it's optimized to its fullest potential. We can work with that as well. Just reach out when you're ready. We'd be happy to talk to you and appreciate everyone listening once again.
Absolutely. Until next time, folks, we appreciate you joining us today on Retire Stronger, Retire Smarter, Live Better, and keep more of what you've earned. Have a great day. Bye-bye.